Today we're going to be talking about conversion rate optimization.
You're not putting something that could impede the journey, and you'll start to see a difference once you start to put these things into play.
Welcome to another episode of Cup of Joe. I'm your host, Joe Van Kampen. Today we're going to be talking about conversion rate optimization with our own Jonathan Hurst Snay. We can lead the horse to water, but how do you make it drink? Jonathan, welcome to Cup of Joe, and thank you for being here.
Hey, Joe, I appreciate it so much. Thank you for having me.
It's awesome. So whenever you're ready, let's pull the presentation up and do your thing. I've got 1.5 million questions for you, so heads up.
I love it. I love it. Beautiful. How's everything looking?
Looks good.
Perfect. Well, when it comes to conversion rate optimization, there's a lot that can be going on. Today, I really wanted to focus on really the foundation, which is how to take your website to the next level, but also some other supporting tactics and things you can do for your community to be sure that you're always staying on top of the user journey and being sure that you have all the ample opportunities for your prospects to be able to convert online. So we talk about your website. And we talk about it being the foundation of your community. I think it's extremely vital that when we think about websites and we think about the fact that it ultimately is the destination, that we understand all of the details that come into play when you have this foundation. I believe that the website is the second most important virtual experience to your community that you could have. It's open 24/7. It's always there. It needs to be as on point as the community itself and the product itself. And when you think about that, you think of this term user experience. And user experience can come in a lot of different ways. But most importantly, when you hear the term UX, you have to think about a lot of different things. You have to think about navigation. And you have to think about the images and the pages and everything that you have on your site. From the moment that a prospect or a potential resident comes to your website, you need to be sure that it is set up to take them down the path that you are intending, almost like the same process you have when you're giving a prospect or the resident a tour. And when you think about that, there's a lot of pieces that come into play. So you can see this breakdown of a few different things on the slide right now. I mentioned navigation, page depth, image sections, call to actions, expertise and authority, and competing elements. And I just wanted to pause there for a second. When you think about competing elements, it's extremely vital to make sure that when you're providing a lot of that strategy on the website and that journey, that you're not putting something that could impede the journey or impede conversion. So you have to be thoughtful of how you place items. And then also think about all the different other elements, like the phone number, how you lay out the different community pages, location pages, etc. And ultimately, all of this comes together in the story of the foundation of how you structure your content. So you digest, learn, and give them an opportunity to take them the next step and convert online.
So Jonathan, going through this list, can you give us a little bit more feedback on a couple of different components? Like you're talking about page depth. What does that mean? And kind of give us some background on that.
Yep, of course. So when you're talking about page depth and those specifics that you find, like when you get to a page, you want to be able to really find out like how much can a user really absorb in a specific set amount of time. And also the importance of when you think about that journey and taking them from one page to another. So when you think about the details of a page and that process, you want to have to kind of just balance that fine tune between just the right amount of content, but also not too much that's going to overwhelm them.
Okay, very cool. So when you're speaking about that, you're talking about overwhelming somebody. I also see here on the list expertise and authority. Obviously, that can also be overwhelming to an extent. How do you ensure that the content of your site or what's going on your website is giving them that expertise and authority, but not overwhelming them with information that might be over a general user's head?
Yep. I think it's extremely important that we balance what I consider the more technical elements with the necessary content to tell the story of your community. So when you think about expertise and authority and credibility, there's a lot of different ways to interpret that. So let's first talk about the fact that you want to make sure that you obviously come across as a leader in the space, and with your content, your information, etc., and that you really come across educated in the space as a resource. But then even the concept of authority, can be taken on the SEO side, and making sure that you are creating enough content that can be read by the search engines, that's readily available to those who are searching, and so your site itself is becoming authoritative in the search engine results pages.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Yes, of course. Great questions. And I think that really kind of sets the structure for, one of the biggest things that we always talk about with our clients and in the space of tracking and data is understanding your audience. So it's great to have a website. It's great to drive traffic. It's great to do various forms of lead generation. But if you don't have the data to interpret it after everything is being absorbed, you might as well just be throwing everything away. They say garbage in, garbage out. That's that quote I'm sure you've heard. So we have to be very smart. Various tools out there. Google Analytics 4, of course, is the hub of, I would say, almost all websites out in the World Wide Web when it comes to marketing. We use that here. There's other tools out there that can give you another layer, like Lucky Orange or Optimizely. These are various heat mapping and A/B testing tools that can kind of give this picture of the data story a whole nother level of visualization. So to be able to understand your audience, there's a lot of key components. So if you have the right tools first, what are you going to then do to be able to analyze within those tools? Things like clicks. Where are users clicking? Things like the popular pages. If you see that a prospect or a potential lead is on the dining page almost during every visit, that's going to tell you something. Maybe that's something that you want to include in an email marketing campaign. Then you look at the conversions. What's that conversion path? Then you really start to dive into those other additional lead generation tools, such as calculators and floor plans, all of the content that we know from the data, of course, that really drives that user journey and also drives a more qualified visitor. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier, you can take it to the next level with heat mapping and A/B testing. And I just wanted to say real quick, for those who may not be familiar with what heat mapping or A/B testing is, heat mapping, just as it sounds, is a way to kind of see the hot spots of a website that you may not otherwise be able to see in typical reports. So if you see that someone is clicking often in a certain area of your site and it actually isn't linking anywhere, heat mapping is really the only way to see that. But maybe that makes you realize that you need to hyperlink that photo that's being clicked on because a user thinks it's going to take them somewhere else, like a gallery. And then A/B testing is awesome because it allows you to take the next level with a lot of different copy that maybe we subjectively think is going to be accepted by the user base. For example, button copy. Does someone want to see the word submit? Do they want to see get in touch? Do they want to see inquire now? And you only can use A/B testing to really understand that information. So this really gives the foundation of what we're talking about is optimizing for the bigger picture, which is the conversions.
Fantastic. So Jonathan, let's go back to the heat mapping component just for a second. What type of metrics, you mentioned clicks as an example, what types of metrics are you able to see with heat map tracking?
Yes, I love that question. Yeah, so besides clicks themselves, you're able to see, you can see scroll depth. So that's one of the things that's quite amazing. We have joked for years about being above the fold or below the fold. And there's a lot of opinions out there because everyone scrolls. I will say that as humans, and this could be my personal opinion, as humans, we naturally react to what we see upon landing on any type of experience. You drive up to a community. What do you see first? You go on a website. What do you see first? So I believe in the fold. So I may get some haters out there, but I believe in that fold. And what it tells you is that you most likely will start to see that as you scroll down, you get the red, the yellow, and you start to get into the cold area. And that's that's what the beautiful thing about heat mapping is. You can visualize the data versus have to see it in a numbers and more, I would say, a quantitative format behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. So for our viewers, that heat mapping and going below the fold, in a lot of situations, what we've noticed and how our websites have been built with conversion in mind is that, to Jonathan's point, where they're scrolling, what they're clicking on, where their mouse is moving around, those different components tell us where buttons should be. But from there, it also tells us what information they're reading. And so if we notice, as an example, that one of our sites that we've, is built with a certain structure or what have you, that we know converts at a high level, for some reason is not converting at that level, we go through that heat map tracking to identify where the break could potentially be. If we notice that there are certain components of content that are all of a sudden making a user drop off of the website, we're going to go in and we're going to adjust that website to see if we can get them going a little bit further through the site. So to your point, Jonathan, I've seen that happen in real time, and I absolutely agree with you, and I believe in the fold as well. Let's talk about A/B testing. So A/B testing, we talk about A/B testing in so many different elements of the sites, campaigns, PPC, SEO, whatever. But let's talk about conversion specifically. Let's say that, as an example, we know that our website's converting at a really high level, but we're also like, hey, you know what? Is it the best it can possibly be? What kinds of tests can we run to either prove that we're where we need to be or see where we can progress?
I love this question because I personally have done so many tests over the years, and it varies on so many levels. And it's one of my favorite things to do because of the unexpected outcomes. So I mentioned a little bit about button copy. That's a big one. You'd be surprised about how much a button subliminally and subconsciously can change a user's ability to submit a form. Also, another piece is required fields. I mean, that is another big thing. You know, it's that balance of how do you help your sales team make sure that they get all the information they need with the conversion rate and getting those leads. And you start to build a story to support your case of why it's important to require fields. Taking it a step further, and this is a really good one, is lifestyle photography versus general stock photography versus photography with or without people at the top of your page. This is an interesting test I've done over the years. And depending on the page, it's quite interesting what you find as it relates to how long a user is willing to stay on a page on what photo you have at the beginning. And one interesting stat I do remember was the photos where someone is actually looking at you or in the camera, eyes towards the camera, towards the photo, actually have a higher bounce rate. Maybe it scares them off. I don't know. But these are the types of things you can never know unless you do something like A/B testing. So one user gets a photo like that, the other user gets a different photo, and it's quite exceptional. And it's really an amazing, amazing tool. I think it's one of the best.
So, Jonathan, you were with me at Smash in Vegas, October 23, and
Yes.
we went to a talk together about pricing transparency on the website. And so a very interesting stat, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the stat was it increased when you did not gate the forms for pricing, it increased the conversion rate by about 32%, or the conversion rate of the sale by 32%. And so what you just mentioned about those specific fields, or whether or not to gate, or different things like that, when we went to Smash and we heard that, it made us want to test. And so we've got some tests rolling right now, and we'll keep you guys posted on where those land, on whether or not you should have gated forms, not gated forms. But based on the speakers at Smash and how reputable they are, and they're very reputable, it was enough for me to say, okay, let's get on board. Let's check this out and see what's happening. So
I love that.
Yeah, very, very cool. I appreciate that. All right.
Yeah.
Continuation. Go for it.
Awesome. Yeah, this is wonderful. And really, I mean, just naturally, as we kind of progress through our chat, I think it's just so interesting because it all starts to really come together, you know, because conversion rate optimization at a high level is ultimately what we're doing among all of the different things we do, be it brand awareness. What's the end goal? The end goal is to get a qualified lead into your community and take them on a tour and get them moved in. And all of these intricate pieces, all of the granular, you know, steps along the way, sometimes get looked over. And that's why I have a specific page here focused on forms. And we've been talking about it a lot. And we just mentioned it when it comes to testing. Another big piece is the form itself, how it's featured, how the field looks, the size of the fields, what is required, etc., the length of it, the button copy. And what I will say to the audience is that it's this fine balance of making sure your sales team is equipped with the right information to have a qualified follow-up. So some sales teams out there might say, I have to have a phone number. But here's the thing, not everyone wants to be followed up by phone. If they're online, a lot of the times they want to be followed up via email. So why not make the phone number field not required? I have been advocating that for years. I've seen statistics that show like 60% or more increases in conversion from forms that don't have the field required for phone number. And then, honestly, you'll probably see a lot of fake numbers sometimes, you know, the good old 555s. But what I will say also is this other layer of personalization. So when you think about the length of the form and fields, there is something to say about including things like what level of care are you interested in, but maybe not require it. Because then it does allow you to start to segment certain types of stories and personalized types of emails and taking them through a more personalized experience, because that is really where you're going to get that data. And then finally, of course, that button copy. And I've hinted at it, we've chatted about it. You know, the word submit versus others, like on an event form using RSVP. It's very, very important to think about all those intricate details down to the button, because obviously that's where those leads are coming from if it's not a phone call.
Yeah,
Awesome. So I really just wanted to kind of, take a stance now to kind of say, okay, what do you need to ask yourself? And then of course, I want to talk a little bit about lead gen right after this. So if you're sitting right now and saying, okay, this is great. There's some questions I want to ask my team, my agency that I work with, etc. How is the website traffic trending right now? Do you know? Could you tell me right now, hey, we have been in an upward trend. Actually, in Q4, we started seeing a downward trend. Do you know off the top of your head, or is that floor plans page getting the most engagement? I can tell you right now, a pricing page or pricing content is critical. Joe mentioned it. It's kind of a no-brainer, especially when you think about the ability to optimize on those keywords. Almost 100% of the time, you're going to find pricing in those types of pages with that content almost in your top 5. Bounce rate. I think it's safe to say that not everyone understands what the word bounce rate means. We talked earlier about page depth and, how far, you get within the journey or within the page itself and taking that next step. Bounce rate itself is so interesting because it really starts to tell you if your ads potentially that are driving to those pages or even the content itself is matching one-to-one with what they're experiencing. What this means is if your bounce rate starts to go higher if no one is visiting additional pages after that first visit. And I think that's very interesting because then you start to say, okay, hey, if I have a high bounce rate from a Google pay-per-click ad, most likely there's something wrong there with how it's connecting. And then this is just, kind of really wraps up about, forms again, about, conversion rates across each form. How are those differing depending on what page, where are they located on the page? And then the most important thing is what I always advocate for. If you have a quality CRM and you have a qualified sales team, you can start to attribute the ultimate story, which is the qualified leads. And you'll start to see a difference once you start to put these things into play.
That's amazing. So thanks, Jonathan. So I just wanted to, for our viewers here, just quickly touch on bounce rate in regards to ads, because obviously we're talking about conversion rate optimization here. We want to make sure that the ads that you're driving are going through to the website and that they're able to convert as well as they can. So the way that the ads are actually ranked on Google has to do with what you're willing to pay per click multiplied by what's called your quality score. And bounce rate is a huge factor of that quality score. Navigation is a huge factor of that quality score, et cetera, et cetera. So if your conversion rate or your bounce rate, if your conversion rate's strong, if your bounce rate's low, et cetera, you'll actually spend less per click, and therefore you'll actually be able to spend less money on Google. So this is actually, not only is this a very strong tool to help you make sure that people are kind of moving through your website properly, but it'll actually make it so that your ads cost less, put more money in your pocket for whatever else you need to spend that money on. So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I love it. And also what I love about this is that it's almost like, you just know exactly what's coming up next. This is what I'm talking about because it's amazing. And when you think about lead gen tactics, and when you think about paid search being what I say is one of the quickest way to get leads, but there's going to be two things we'll talk about today, and how can you optimize your various tactics for conversion. We're right on topic here. So you think about CRO, you think about paid search advertising, and what CRO focused optimizations can be done beyond the website. And that's the interesting thing is that although when you think about conversion rate optimization, you think of almost right away, you think about forms. You think about someone hitting submit or hitting talk now on a chat, but it's everything. I mean, believe it or not, you could take a step further and say it's even the people at your community. Everyone down to the person having a conversation is helping the whole conversion experience. But when you talk about paid search advertising, Joe hit it right. There's so many different things, quality score, bounce rate, et cetera. So you want to make sure that foundation is up and to speed and up to par. But let's take it a step further. Let's talk about ad copy and targeting and keywords, et cetera. And let's just focus on level of care, obviously, which is very important across all communities, assisted living. You want to make sure that your ad copy for assisted living is written in such a way that when they type in assisted living in city state, which is a very, very common keywords, phrase, query, etc., takes them to your ad, which then gets them to click through to a page that's dedicated to assisted living. This is exactly the first step in conversion rate optimization. You're now creating the one-to-one-to-one connection between keyword to ad to destination. You now are also making sure that you're targeted, and Google also can help support around all of those other things that you don't see on the AI front. So you're driving to that assisted living page, and then you can really hone in on making sure that that conversion is relevant. You'll see an amazingly high conversion rate when you start to build that experience. And last thing I mentioned here, just so you know, is extensions. And those are those things that you see around the ads. You know, are they individual links to specific pages on your site, like your dining page or floor plans, pricing? Also call extensions. All of these different things are related to the exact same story we're talking about here, which is optimizing for that conversion. All right. And so the other big piece when we think about conversion is SEO in blogs. You know, so if someone comes out and says, what are the two most important lead generation tactics for senior living? It's SEO and it's PPC. And of course, those are the two that you can have the most attribution with. And when you think about SEO, you think about, okay, maybe a little bit more of a brand awareness play, a resource play, et cetera. How can you, really optimize that with CRO? But this is what I was kind of hinting at earlier, is that, blogs help with branding and authority, which of course are key to potential customers converting. And blogs are chosen specific topics, related to what they're actually searching for in our client's geographic area. So I think it's very important to think about that because when the content is targeted, the top of funnel queries are more likely to bring potential customers to our sites. But if the potential residents don't convert in the moment, we obtain the mind share as they answer a query in a moment of need. So this is a very interesting statistic, and our SEO team is extremely talented when we think about these details. So let's just say, for example, that someone makes a search and they come to a specific blog. Well, we can see what types of queries are starting to drive that type of traffic to the content. So maybe they don't convert, but we start to develop a story. And if that story is relevant, then we can also start to create content and start to learn upon itself. And so why this is important is that over time, when someone's looking for a topic, let's just use an example. What I have seen over many, many years is very popular is how to help my parents downsize and move into a community, things like that. When you have a blog with a topic like that, it's going to be searched hundreds of thousands of times. How do you make sure that you are becoming a resource and then a sales team? So you bring them in with the resourceful content, they learn about your brand, and then naturally you're starting to bring in conversions. So you're selling without selling. And I do love SEO. It is a very, very high ROI when it comes to conversions and leads. Wonderful. So as I kind of talk about some takeaways, just to kind of sum everything up, it's extremely important to kind of think about this, what I consider like in a assembly line format. So your first thing is your foundation. You think your website is really the key, your 24/7 community. It's behind the scenes. It's making sure that everything is represented well for your community. It's where everything is being driven to. And if you take away anything related to a website, which I think is number one priority, it's going to be those forms, because ultimately that's where they're going to be able to put in their information. So how can you make that, least rigid as possible and really open up the floodgates to allow someone to submit their information? A fun quote I always love is the details are in the data. So when you think about the data, you think about behind the scenes, all the information, make sure that you have a quality CRM, a quality setup with all of your data tracking behind the scenes, and a quality reporting structure, because that way you can really make some more educated decisions when it comes to optimizing for conversion rates. And then lead gen tactics. And like I say here, CRO matters here too. So even though you think of conversion rate optimization being the website itself, things like paid search, the SEO that you do, the content, et cetera, all of these pieces play into making sure that you create the best experience possible for your residents and prospects. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Jill. I mean, this has been great. I always love chatting with you, and especially about one of the fun topics out there of CRO, and it's ever changing. So I'm sure the next time we chat, it's going to be a totally different way to approach things. And who knows, we might be using AI to do our CRO in the future? I have no idea.
We'll see. Thank you so much for joining, Jonathan, and thank you all for watching today. Jonathan, you are obviously very, very intelligent, very well versed in all of these different factors. So I wanted to thank you for that. I did have one last point that kind of just came on as you mentioned something. You were mentioning about how healthy CRMs, how a good CRM can be a major game changer in this CRO process. And I just wanted to quickly touch on making sure that you have a bilateral integration with that CRM as well, which basically means we're able to see the user come through from PPC, SEO, the website, all those different components, then through to the CRM. Then we'll be able to take a look at to see what that real-time return on investment is, so that you can adjust all of your campaigns to ensure that you're getting the best conversion rate from them. Like you said, the data is so important, and having that ability to do that is so valuable. Again, Jonathan, thank you so much. Jonathan's email is jonathan@citizen55.com. You can reach myself, Joe, at citizen55.com, or you can call the main line 403-903-3703 to speak to one of our professionals if you have any questions. Thank you so much.